Alright guys, there's no warm-up today, but you need to get out your calculator pouch and go ahead and head your journal. Today we're talking about slope-intercept form, which is 3-3 in your book. And go ahead and fill out your table of contents. I'll give you another minute, and then when everyone's ready, we will begin. Okay, let's start off by talking about slope-intercept form. If you go back to the back of your front cover, okay, we're still in the linear unit, so let's look at linear. Okay, and what we already actually know slope-intercept form, but we just call it y equals mx plus b. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, and that's a way of writing any linear equation. If you look above that, standard form, we're going to be learning that in the next couple days. That's another way of writing a linear equation, as well as point-slope formula. So these three formulas all mean the same thing. It's just different ways of writing the equation, but it all means the same thing, and we can convert each one to the other. Okay, so today we're focusing on slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So let's go ahead and write that very large at the top. Okay, so I'm going to put y equals mx plus b. And let's talk about each part of this equation. So let's start off with the m. What does the m stand for here? Go ahead and write down what you know about the m. Okay, remember I told you the m looks sort of like mountains, okay, or a slope, okay, and our m represents the slope of the graph. Okay, another word for slope is rate of change, which sometimes we just abbreviate to the rock. And we also learned when we talked about direct variation. Remember we spell constant with a K in math, okay, and that would be our constant of variation. Okay, all those things mean the same thing. It's our slope. It's rise over run. That's how we find the slope. We have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. There's lots of different ways we can find the slope from a table, graph, points, okay, but the m in the equation represents the slope. Notice the m is always attached to our variable that is x. Okay, the b could be plus or minus b, but in our standard form for slope-intercept, it'd be considered just plus b. And what does that actually represent? What does the b represent? I'll give you a hint. My little picture. I'm not an artist, so don't make fun of me. But where do you start your day? I start my day in bed or brushing your teeth. So this is our starting point. Whenever we talk about word problems, it's usually like a one-time fee, or it's what we have to start off paying, and then it's the hourly fee after that. Okay, so it's the starting point on the y-axis, and we know that as the y-intercept. Okay, so the part that's being added or subtracted is our y-intercept. Now, as we come to more word problems, okay, we also already identified this in the past, but what are some words for slope? So if I give you a word problem, what are some words that we should look for to help us identify what the slope is in a word problem? There's 3 of them. Okay, miles per hour. Per would represent, that's my slope because we're multiplying per hour. Okay, each is another one, and the last one here is every. So we have to remember that these 3 words really signify that that represents the slope in a word problem. Okay, I want you to do the same thing, but I want you to write the words for the y-intercept now. Okay, so what words do word problems use that represent the y y-intercept. I'm going to give you a couple minutes, maybe 1 or 2, to work with your neighbor. Go ahead and write down as much as you can. We'll pause the video, and then when everyone's ready, we'll push play. Okay, some of the words that represent y-intercept. First one would be our starting point. Okay, the tank might already contain 50 gallons. Okay, so that would be our starting point. How about one-time fee? Okay, if I hire someone to paint the house, they charge a one-time fee of $100 just for the appointment, and then $50 every hour after that. Okay, initial fee is very similar to the one-time fee. The initial fee could be a flat fee. Sometimes when we heard the word first, so first you have to pay this, and then it's $10 for every candy bar you get. Original amount could be another one. Base rate could be another word that represents your y-intercept or your starting point. Maybe already have. I already have this amount, and we're going to add or subtract more. Okay, you could have a couple more, but those are some very common words that we're going to see. Okay, so we should know very well slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So one of the first things that you're going to have to do is identify what's the slope and what's the y-intercept from an equation. So if I give you an equation, let's say y is equal to -4/5 x plus 7. Okay, you're going to have to identify what the slope is and what is the y-intercept. So looking at my equation, I notice that it's in the form of y equals mx plus b. So all I have to do is identify which one's the slope, which one's the y-intercept. I always look for the y-intercept first because that's the part that's being added or subtracted. So the y-intercept here is a +7, which means it crosses over the y-axis at +7. And my slope here is negative, and it's -4/5. So I'm just identifying what the slope and the y-intercept is. Go ahead and try this one by yourself. Let's do y is equal to 3 plus 7x. Tell me what the slope is as well as the y-intercept. Okay, again, the slope here is what's attached to the variable x because it's $7 per whatever this is. So the slope here is 7, and the y-intercept here is a +3. Now notice, it's not in y equals mx plus b, they just flip-flop the mx plus b, so be careful when you're identifying the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, I want you to try these last two by yourself, and then we'll discuss. So y equals -7. Tell me what the slope is as well as the y-intercept. And x equals 4. What's the slope? And what's the y-intercept? You might have to go back in your notes to look. Give you a second to work on that. Talk with your neighbor if you need to. If you recall back in your notes, when we talked about the slopes and the y-intercepts, we identified 4 slopes in our review. This is from October 4th. Okay, and if I look at the bottom, okay, remember we have the equation that's always y equals a number and x equals a number. When it's y equals a number, that creates that horizontal line because all of these points have the y value that's the same. Okay, so again, we wrote the equation y equals 5. There's no slope here because I don't go up or down, I don't rise. So, when it comes to this first one, okay, y equals -7. Okay, the slope here is 0 because there's no x value. And what's the y-intercept? Y-intercept here would be -7. Okay, this second one. Again, if I look back in my notes at the types of slopes that I have, Okay, a vertical line, I always write the equation, x is equal to that number. Okay, so I'm going to change that actually to a number. Okay, in this case it was x is equal to 4 because all the x values are 4. So when we write the equation for that, we have x is equal to 4. Now remember, this slope, whenever I type it in the calculator, it ends up saying error at the top, which means it's an undefined slope. So remember, this is a zero slope because it's a horizontal line, so I'm actually going to write that down. Horizontal, and I'm going to underline the z. This slope is actually undefined because this is our vertical line. So our slope here is undefined. And what would the y-intercept be? If all the x values are 4, just like the picture that I showed you, let me show you again, where does it cross over the y-axis? It doesn't cross over the y-axis. So therefore, our equation doesn't have a y-intercept. So this would be no y-intercept. Okay? So again, you get sort of those tricky ones, but you have to be smart about what is the slope. Is it a horizontal or vertical line? That tells us if it's a zero undefined slope, and where does it cross over that y-axis. Okay, let's talk more about this slope-intercept form. What you're going to get is this half sheet of paper. I want you to go ahead and glue that into the next page in your journal, so I'll give you a couple minutes to work on that, and then when everyone's ready, we will begin. Alright, now that I have that glued in, I wrote my slope-intercept form at the top, y equals mx plus b. And what we're going to be looking at right now is graphing the equation in slope-intercept form, writing the equations from a graph, and then also writing equations from 2 points. Okay, so that's our main focus today. Again, we already know a lot of this, so it should be quite a review. But again, just to hear it for the second or third time is great practice. So let's talk about graphing equations in slope-intercept form. Okay, the first thing that I always look for, again, is making sure it's in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, so we might have to convert it. And then the first thing I want to do is plot the y-intercept. Once I plot the y-intercept, then I'm able to use the rise over run to get the slope. So we're going to make the slope a fraction, and then we're going to use rise over run. So plot the points using rise over run. Always look for the y-intercept first. That at least cancels out 2 of the multiple choice questions out of the 4 when it comes to test and the EOC. So let's review rise over run. Remember, rise is the change of y's over the change of x's. So for the change of y's, if I go up, okay, that means I'm going into positive numbers. So I want you to draw the 4 quadrants off to the side. Okay, and the way that we can think of which direction, if it's a positive or negative. If I'm standing on the origin and I go up, these are all positive numbers. Okay, if I go down, those would be negative numbers. So wherever I start at, the y-intercept, if I go up, it's a positive number. If I go down, it's a negative number. Same thing for run. If I go to the right, so I'm at the origin and I move to the right, these are all positive numbers. If I move to the left, these are all negative numbers. So that always helps me remember if it's being added or subtracted. So let's take a look using these steps to plot the example that's given. So at the bottom it gives us the example. Y is equal to negative 3 halves x plus 4. First of all, is that in slope-intercept form? Is that in y equals mx plus b? Yes, it is. So let's identify what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. What is the y-intercept first? Okay, the y-intercept here is a positive 4. So since I know the y-intercept is a positive 4, that's the first thing I'm going to do is plot the y-intercept. So go up the y-axis to a positive 4 and put a dot there. Now the slope from this equation is going to be negative 3 over 2. So, step 2 is make the slope a fraction. It's already a fraction for me. So now I'm going to use rise over run to create the rest of this graph. So I'm going to write my slope off to the side, negative 3 over 2. Which directions am I going here? If this is my rise over run, this rise is a negative 3, which means I'm going down 3. My run is a positive 2. So again, my run is a positive 2, so I'm going to the right 2. So from my y-intercept, I'm going to go down 3 units, 1, 2, 3, and over to the right 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to put a dot there. So notice, I went down 3, minus 3, over positive 2. Okay, and I keep doing that. Down 3, 1, 2, 3, over 2 to the right. Down 3, 1, 2, 3, over 2 to the right. Now I could probably put one up here. If I want to go backwards, so instead of going down 3 to the right 2, just do the opposite to continue making a straight line. So instead of going down 3, right 2, we're going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, left 2. And that will still continue to make that straight line. Go ahead and connect your points. Remember, we always put arrows on the ends to show it's continuous and it keeps going and going. And that's how we graph equations in slope-intercept form. We find the y-intercept first, and then we use the slope that they give us to do rise over run. Down 3 over 2, down 3 over 2, to create the rest of that line. Okay, the next thing, let's write equations in slope-intercept form. Okay, now from a graph. So, they give us a graph. We want to take this graph and write it into an equation. So we're sort of working backwards from what we just did. I gave you an equation and we had to graph it. Now they give you the graph, we have to write the equation. So the first thing again that I always like to do first is find the y-intercept. So if I notice the y-intercept, it's probably halfway between the negative 2 and negative 4. Which means my y-intercept is probably what? Should be negative 3. So my y-intercept is negative 3 here. Okay, the next step is I'm going to find 2 points on the line, and we want to start with the farthest left point. We always do that. And then find the rise over run to find the slope. So again, we're working from here. I'm going to pick another point or a couple points on the line. This one looks like it intersects perfectly, as well as this point right here. So the two that intersect perfectly, I'm going to start at the farthest left point, which would be here if I'm using these 2 points. I'm going to go up 1 unit, but I have to look, that's from negative 2 to 0. So I went up 2. So plus 2 is my rise. And then I'm going over from 2 to 6 to the right. So that would be plus what? From 2 to 4 is 2, 4 to 6 is 2, so plus 4. So my slope here is up 2 to the right 4, which is 2/4, and that simplifies to 1/2. So my slope here for this problem is 1/2. Now, once we found the y-intercept from the graph and then did our rise over run, okay, now we're going to plug the y-intercept and slope into y equals mx plus b. So, my equation here, if it's y equals mx plus b, it'd be y equals 1/2 x minus 3. Now let's double check. This is a positive slope. Is it going up from left to right or down from left to right? It's going up, so I know that's positive. What's another way I could write this? That means the same exact thing. Okay, they could just flip-flop and put the b or the y-intercept first, so that would just look like this. Y equals negative 3 plus 1/2 x. That's the same exact thing, it's just they flip-flop. They put the b first and then the slope after. Okay, so again, follow these steps. We find the y-intercept first, then we pick 2 points on the line that intersect the grid points perfectly. Start at the farthest left, find the slope using rise over run, and then put it back into the equation. And the last thing is write an equation from 2 points. So we already started to do this, the first couple steps we already know how to do. Okay, the first thing we want to do is find the slope. Okay, so again, from 2 points, we can find the slope using this formula. Or our calculator. We'll check that after we do it by hand. So let's go ahead and label, this is the first point on the line, this is the second point on the line. So we're going to put x1, y1, x2, y2. And let's go ahead and put this into the equation. So my y2 here is -8 minus my y1, which is a +1, all over x2 minus x1. x2 is 5 minus my x1, which is 2. So once I have that plugged in, let's find the slope. So -8 minus 1 is -9. 5 minus 2 is a +3. 3 goes into 9 3 times, which leaves me with my slope is -3 over 1. Now let's double check that with our calculator, since we know how to enter these 2 points in our calculator to find the slope. So, remember how we get there? I push stat, and then I'm going to go to edit 1. I'm going to go to clear whatever I have, so highlight L2, push clear, enter. Highlight L1, push clear, enter. I'm going to enter in this first point, 2, enter, 1, enter, and then 5, enter, -8, enter. Okay, to find the slope, I'm going to go back to stat, over to the right, calculate, go down to 4, which is len reg, push enter, go all the way down to calculate, and our slope here should be -3. Now again, we want to write the equation. They actually give us the equation right there, but how did they know that the y-intercept here is 7? So let's continue with what we know. Just put that off to the side. Once I find the slope, okay, what I want to do is I'm going to pick any one of these points, doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to plug that into the slope-intercept form equation to find the b. So, let's see what I already have. Okay, again, this is my equation, y equals mx plus b. What do I already know? Well, I know that the m is -3. So this is what I have so far. Okay, and again, it said pick one of these points, which is my x and my y. Well, that's what I need. If I know an x and a y, I can plug those in. So let's just pick the first one. The x is 2 and the y is 1. So the y here is 1. My slope falls down. The x, that matches up with the y that we used, 1. The x was 2. And I want to find what the b is. So I'm going to go ahead and solve. Okay, I have 1 is equal to -3 times 2 is -6 plus the b. Now I want to get b by itself, so how do I get rid of this -6? I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And I end up having 7 is equal to b. Okay, so that's where they came up with the y-intercept here. And if I actually plug this back in, so again, we want to write the equation. So once I have these two, I'm going to write the equation. I get y is equal to -3x plus 7. That would be my answer because I'm putting my slope in with the y-intercept. Let's go ahead and graph that and make sure that these 2 points are on that line. So how do I graph that? Remember, go to y equals, clear whatever you have, and let's plug in -3x plus 7. I'm going to graph it just to make sure it looks linear. And now I'm going to go to my table to make sure these 2 points are solutions to this line. So I'm going to go to second graph. I'm looking for 2, 1, which that is a point, and 5, -8, which is a point. So I know I did that correctly. Okay, so the 3 things that you're going to have to know how to do on your assignment for today is graphing the equations, writing the equations from a graph, and writing the equations from 2 points. Now before we get to that assignment, what you're going to do is keep your notes out on your desk, and Miss Osborne will hand out the 3-3 game. It's your turn. Read the directions. You might have to adjust this based off of the time that you have left in class. This is meant to be a matching game where you flip it over, sort of like memory, but that might take a little while, so I'll let Miss Osborne make that decision. If there's not enough time, then you can just work with your partner and cut these rectangles out and the squares out and match them up based off of, match the equation with the graph. Okay, so why don't you're going to do that, so we'll pause the video, okay, take a couple minutes, should only last 5 to 10 minutes, and then I will give you your assignment and discuss what I want you to do. Okay, go ahead and play It's Your Turn 3-3. Okay, now that you're finished with the game, what you're going to need is a piece of graph paper. So the graph paper should be close to the lined paper. Go ahead and put your name at the top. Put 3-3. The date here is the 12th of October. And period Friday. We're only going to need this for a couple of them, but at least you have this piece of graph paper. So go ahead and head that. Someone in your class will hand out the homework. I actually did a couple of these for you before it was copied. So once you have that headed, look at 1 through 6. Okay, all it asks you to do is find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of each equation. So they give you the equation. I want you to fill in what the m and the b are, okay, for each problem. Pretty simple. You don't have to show me your work for that one. Okay, number 7 through 10. It says write an equation when you're given the slope and the y-intercept. So they give you the slope, they give you the y-intercept, you write it into slope-intercept form. Pretty easy, don't have to show me your work. The next couple, okay, write the equation in slope-intercept form of each line. So you're using your notes. You can show me your work off to the side here, but your final answer needs to be circled and on this line in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Okay, remember using your notes, find the y-intercept first, then use rise over run. So no work, only on here. Okay, you can show me your rise over run, just like how I did right here. On the back, 16 through 19, write the equation in slope-intercept form for a line that passes through these points. This is exactly like the example we did in our notes, the last one. So I want to see your work. You can show me your work for this on the piece of graph paper. So you're just going to start with 17. Show me your equation, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and then plug that slope back into the equation with one of those points to solve. So your work, if you want to write work next to those, make sure you show me your work for those 4. The next one are the ones that we need to graph. So it says graph each equation. So on your paper, you're going to graph these. Doesn't matter how big it is. We can actually do the first one together. So it's going to be a little bit out of order, but that's okay. We'll do 20. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and draw the 4 quadrants. Okay, number 20. Okay, one thing that I would do, and this is actually, I want everyone to do this. I want you to put m equals b equals, because to graph these, it's very important that we identify what the slope and what the y-intercept is. So I want everyone to take a second and just put m equals b equals for each one. So now if I look at this, the y-intercept for number 20 is -2. What's the slope? What's the number that's sitting in front of that x? It's 1, so I'm going to make that as a fraction, 1 over 1. So now that I identified my slope and y-intercept, let's graph it. So the y-intercept, first thing I should graph is -2. So I'm going to put a dot at -2. Again, you can label this if you'd like. Oops. I'm just going to go by 2's. Okay, so -2 is my y-intercept. And my slope here is 1 over 1. So I'm going to go up 1 to the right 1. So from my y-intercept, I'm going up 1 to the right 1. Put a dot there. Up 1 to the right 1. As long as you have 2 points to the right of that first one and 2 points to the left, then you should be good. So if I went up 1 to the right 1, I'm going to go opposite. Down 1 to the left 1 to continue that straight line. Down 1 to the left 1. I'm going to connect my points, draw arrows on both sides, and that's all I have to do. Okay, so 20 through 27 you are going to graph. And then the last couple are multiple choice. So again, use this graph. Make sure you look at the intervals off to the side so you don't make those errors. Okay, start working on this. Whatever you don't finish will be your homework, and we will grade it first thing tomorrow. Have a splendid day.